Hey guys, how you going? This one's just going to be a bit of a how-to. Today we're going to be replacing the rotors and pads on the back of the Patrol. Obviously this car, as I said in the previous video, has sat for a really long time, around 5 years, so these are pretty rusted and they are quite worn down, and the pads are pretty much non-existent. I'll give you guys a better look at it, but just some maintenance before we get her on the road. So I'll take you through and show you guys how to do that, and yeah, enjoy. So first things first is going to be obviously removing the wheel so that you're left with the rotor and the calipers. You have a look at the back here, there's a bolt here and another one on the underneath. They're usually an 18mm. Undo them, that'll remove the caliper, and then we can start getting ready to take off the rotor. Okay, so first things first is cracking those two bolts I showed you before. So they're actually a 19mm, so we'll go ahead and break them now. I like to just crack them both first before you fully undo them. Speeding this part up, we're basically just undoing the two bolts at the back so we can take the caliper off, remove the brake pads, and also fit the new rotor. Alright, now that we've got everything off, guys, we should be able to remove the caliper. And sometimes the rotor can be a little bit stuck, so get a hammer, just give it a tap, and usually that's enough to get them to come off. Apologise for the camera angle on some of these next videos, guys. I'd forgotten to adjust the camera up, but we're just giving around the hub and the hub assembly a bit of a buff with a wire brush. We're going to give it a few coats of paint with cheap black paint just to make it look slightly better, but mainly just to prevent rust and give it that extra barrier of protection. Now that we've given it a buff, we'll just give it a couple of quick coats of cheap paint. The tape is just to go over the threads of the stud. You don't really want to be painting them, so just go over, put a bit of tape over each one of the studs and give it a paint. I've sped this part up, guys, just because it's pretty simple. We're just ripping a few bits of tape off to wrap around the threads so that when we spray the paint on, it's not getting clogged up with paint. And yes, that's my dog. She's come out to give me a quick visit. Now just hit him with a bit of paint, let it dry, maybe hit it with a second one. Alright, and we're just going to give it a quick second coat, guys, let it dry, and then start putting it back together. Some of these sections are voiced over, guys. The volume and the sound quality didn't turn out the greatest, so basically what I'm explaining here is the piston's going to be pushed out in the caliper due to the pads being smaller on the old worn out ones. So basically what I do is I get an F-clamp, squeeze the piston back in, just pushing the fluid back up the system, and then I put the new pads in and go ahead and assemble, put the new hubs on, etc. I have sped this part up just so it doesn't get boring, but that's what we're doing. Just finishing up this side now, getting the caliper, hitting it on, and putting the two main bolts back in that hold the caliper in place. And then that's this side almost finished. We just got to bleed the system. Alright guys, same as before, so we'll be taking off the two 19mm bolts, taking the caliper off, popping the pads out, removing this, giving it a quick paint and a bit of a wire brush, and then putting the new parts back on. So here I am taking off the caliper and popping out the old pads and taking off the old rotor, fitting the new pads, the new rotor, and giving it a first coat of paint. Right guys, we're just going to give it a second coat of paint now. It's been about 15 minutes for it to dry, and then we'll start reassembling it. Alright guys, we're going to go ahead now and start reassembling. Alright guys, so here we are bleeding the brakes. So what I like to do is put a hose on the end of the bleeding nipple. look on your size, get a bottle of fluid that's got a little bit of old fluid in it or crappy stuff, and run your tube into there. It just allows it so that when you're releasing the pressure, that it's not sucking air back in. Here we are, guys, just bleeding up the brakes now. 10 times easier if you've got someone to help you. They can jump in and pump the pedal for you. I must add, guys, this video has been filmed in a fair few sections just due to the fact I've got a bit of a bung knee at the moment, so I can't sit on the crate for long periods of time. But generally speaking, this is not a big job. 2-3 hours, you should be able to knock out the whole lot. As you guys can also see during this bleeding, that the fluid that was in the lines was really dirty, so it definitely was time for this to be done and had been sitting a long time. And here we are, guys, doing the same thing on the other side, just pumping the pedal, bleeding up the brakes, getting rid of that old fluid that had sat for a long time and replacing it with new fluid and getting it ready to go. Hey guys, thanks for watching. So that's just a really simple rotor and pad change on the back of a GU Patrol. A few basic skills and tools, and it's a pretty straightforward job. Cheers for tuning in.